Well, good morning. I am so glad to welcome you to this power session today. We've got a very full palette, but I want to start by giving my thanksgiving to the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce, the Ashland Alliance, the Grayson Chamber, and the Maysville, Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. All these folks have agreed to promote these for their membership and to invite people to come, and they sponsor in that way. And we've just had a wonderful response to this particular subject. So I'm excited to offer this. And so emotional intelligence, it's a huge subject. It's a very popular subject nowadays. It's a buzzword even, I would say. The information or the content that I have today is not anything new or unique from me. It is coming from a book by Daniel Goleman, kind of the classic work, Working with Emotional Intelligence. And then I found another real practical book, Emotional Intelligence for the Modern Leader by Christopher Connors. So both of those are available on Amazon if you want to do more research type thing and understand the depths of this. We're certainly in an hour not going to get there. I'm just going to give you a very practical coaching use of these concepts today, but and a self-evaluation. So I'm really excited about where we're headed. So let's get going. That is me. Been married for 37 years to Connie. Wonderful marriage. I'm very thankful for that blessing. I have 3 grown sons, and they are out of the house and they're doing well. I'm granddaddy of all granddaddies. That title I try to live up to whenever I get the opportunity to express it. I've been serving regional business leaders for over 25 years, and specifically for 19 years, I've been a business and life coach. I'm also a biblical counselor. I help people with marital issues and personal issues in that role from a Christian perspective, and I have a passion to help people. And so that's what pulls all this together. You will almost always, when you tune into my program, see these rules of the game. I call them rules of life, but I'm asking you to agree to these today as you go through this process for one reason: so that you take this beautiful hour out of your life you're given to this meeting and you get the most out of it. That will happen when you embrace an ownership mindset. One of the things I talk about all the time, and anybody that's been around these knows that I go here, there's this distinction between owners and victims. Victims are entitlement people. Victims are people that believe everything is they just deserve to get everything by doing nothing for it. And when things don't go their way, it's somebody else's fault, or there's an excuse, or there's a blame, or there's a denial. Don't even pay attention to what's going on. All of us are victims at times. And I think there's a true victim status when people do things against you and abuse you and cause you problems. So I'm not denying that there is a thing of being a victim. However, if you're a victim, you can choose to have a victim mindset, or you can choose to own your situation and step up above the line and own it and be accountable and be responsible and use your ability to respond. It's not what's happened to me, but it's what am I going to do about it? How am I going to respond? So that ownership mindset is just, I'm going to look in the mirror and say, if it's to be, it's up to me. I'm going to do something about it. That means I'm going to participate 100%. Here's what you will need today to fully participate. You will need a piece of paper and a pen. And we'll be getting to that here shortly, because there's going to be a wonderful short assessment on emotional intelligence that you can take. It's kind of simple 4 questions, but it will help you kind of assess where you are, so that when we go to the application piece today, you can use that to kind of direct your next steps and what action you might want to take. That's participation. It's learning. It is gathering information, but information, if you stop there, that's not participation. Participation is when you get out of the chair and do something. So I encourage you and implore you 100% in today. You'll get a lot back. Come with a curious mindset, not an I know mindset. Some of you probably know a whole lot more about emotional intelligence, the subject, than I do, but I'm bringing you one person's perspective that I think will be helpful. So if you'll set aside your I know about this and your ego and just say, I'm curious, maybe I can pick up some pointers. Maybe I can learn something brand new. Maybe this can be a life-changing event. I don't know. But I'm curious. And if we'll do all that, I think we'll have a lot of fun. So let's go and put the seatbelt on. I'm going to give you the agenda or the outline from the outset. Here it is. We're going through the introduction now. And in that, in a minute here, I'll define emotional intelligence and understand how it relates to leadership specifically. Second, going to provide that self-assessment. That's where you'll need that paper and pen. Going to understand 5 pillars of emotional intelligence right out of Daniel Goleman's work, but then give you a way to assess your current competence in each one. Again, this is a self-assessment. It's not a complete evaluation. It's just something simple to use today to help you get familiar with the concepts and really just do some practical things to help yourself. Based on that assessment, you can look at the application. We will examine several practical tools and suggested habits on how you can improve your emotional intelligence. And to me, that's the fun part of the seminar. So I'll probably rush a little bit to get there. And then finally, what are you going to do about it? Your action plan. We'll finish up with a couple of questions about, are you going to choose at least one of these habits, or maybe something you come up with on your own to implement? Because if you don't take action on this, it was nice being with you for an hour, but what did it serve you? It's what you do with this today that will make the biggest difference. So that's our session agenda, and that gives you a sense of where we're going. So let's talk about this introduction just to get familiar with the subject if you're not familiar with it. That's your brain. The basic thing I want you to see is there's an outer cortex, which is really more of the control function that we have, the lobes, the frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal lobe. But then you've got the emotional brain, which is the limbic system. Again, giving a very simple anatomy here. But let's just say this: we've got a rational side, we've got an emotional side. The emotional side is usually what is not as developed as it needs to be or controlled as it needs to be a great leader. Some people are very intelligent, very good at their job, very good at the tasks, but the people side, which is the emotional side, is sometimes lacking. So we're talking about improving your emotional intelligence. There's IQ and there's EQ. EQ is the term or the letters used for emotional intelligence. We're trying to increase your EQ today, or show you how to go about that. There are 2 different kinds of intelligence: logical and emotional. Logical processes occur primarily in the neocortex, which is the outer or the top brain, and emotional processes in the subcortex, lower brain. Why do we put this up here? It's anatomical, it's biological. We're not talking about some kind of mystical, super spiritual thing. We're talking about how your brain works. And we want to develop the whole brain as much as possible if we want to help people be the best leaders they can be. So what exactly is emotional intelligence? Well, Daniel Goleman defines it this way: EQ, or emotional intelligence, is the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. I think that's worth stating again. Emotional intelligence is the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves for managing our emotions well and also in our relationships. The most effective leaders have developed a high EQ, and there's a lot of research in the books that I've offered. If you buy those, there have been a lot of research done to show that where leadership typically taps out is not in the competence to do the tasks or the job, but it's in the relationships and in the communication that goes with those relationships between individuals. And so people with a high emotional intelligence are self-aware. So if you want to get that piece of paper out now, and just down the left-hand side of that paper, you need to put these pillars down. And the first one is self-awareness. The second one is people with a high emotional intelligence are self-regulated. Self-aware, self-regulated. People with a high EQ are self-motivated. If you're catching this, this is just about maturity. Fourth, people with a high emotional intelligence are empathetic. In other words, they can feel other people's emotions. They can enter into those. They have good involvement in that area. And finally, people with high emotional intelligence have developed social skills. They've put an effort into getting better at working with people. So if you have your piece of paper, write down those 5 things: self-aware, self-regulated, self-motivated, empathetic, and social skills. Now we're going to take the assessment, because based on where you see yourself to be today, I'm going to give you some help or some tools or some direction to go to get to improve where you may need a little bit of help. So let's look at the self-awareness first. Self-awareness. Let's define it. Self-awareness is being connected with what we are feeling in the moment and using that sense to guide our decisions. We have a realistic assessment of our own abilities and a well-grounded self-confidence. I like that well-grounded self-confidence. We're not talking about standing in front of the mirror and trying to make ourselves out with a lot of positive confessions to have some kind of delusional self-confidence. We have a realistic assessment of our strengths and weaknesses. And we know where we're good and where we sometimes need some help. And we're connected with the feelings involved with that. So we have a good sense or a good intuition to guide our decisions. That's self-awareness. So here's the first assessment question. As you assess yourself in self-awareness, consider this following statement. And what I want you to specifically consider, I'll go ahead and put this up here. I want you to, as I read this statement, I want you to say, this statement is true for me in most situations, almost all situations, most situations, some situations, a few situations, almost no situations. And there's a scale of 1 to 5. So you want to put out the word self-awareness, and then you're going to give yourself a 1 to 5 based on this statement. Let me read it. This is you speaking to yourself. I have a clear sense of my feelings in the moment. I have a realistic and accurate understanding of my own abilities, strengths, and weaknesses, and I have an inner sense of security and self-confidence. Give yourself a 5 if that's true in most situations, almost all, or a 4 if it's most, or 3 if it's some, or 2 if it's in a few situations, or almost never do I feel that way or sense that, Dave. That would be a 1. So just give yourself a score there. Give you a moment to take a look at that and get that number down. Don't want to rush through this. Okay, let's look at pillar number 2, self-regulation. Here's the definition. Self-regulated person handles their emotions so they can facilitate rather than hinder the task at hand. In other words, emotions are your friend and they help you. Being conscientious and delaying immediate gratification to pursue goals. Recovering well from emotional distress. In other words, we're not a big baby anymore emotionally. We put our emotions in the place that they belong and they don't take us over, but we don't ignore them. We use them as a help, not a hindrance to whatever we're trying to get done. By being conscientious of other people's feelings as well as my own, and putting off my own immediate gratification for the bigger purpose of getting something done. That's what self-regulation is. This is so key in leadership, to be self-regulated. And when things do get difficult and when things do get tough and I get a little down, I recover well. A self-regulated person knows how to regulate their emotions so their emotions don't take them hostage. I always call it smart Dave and stupid Dave. I'm able to keep stupid Dave in timeout, the little 3-year-old in me that throws a fit and gets out of control. So consider this statement for the self-evaluation on self-regulation. Here's the statement. I keep my commitments, even when I don't feel like it, and have learned how to adapt to a range of positive and negative emotions. I stay flexible, organized, and focused, and navigate difficult circumstances by maintaining a positive outlook and summoning inner strength to keep going. Is that statement true about you almost always? 5, most of the time 4, some of the time 3, occasionally 2, almost never. Let me read it again. I just want you to listen to it and think about how true this is for you in the current way you behave. I keep my commitments even when I don't feel like it, and have learned how to adapt to a range of positive and negative emotions. I stay flexible, organized, and focused and navigate difficult circumstances by maintaining a positive outlook and summoning inner strength to keep going. Just read that again and look at those responses and find a number there that you think fits you. Almost always, most of the time, some of the time, occasionally, almost never. Are you self-regulated? Think about the power of taking this assessment. Obviously, we'll send these slides to you in this assessment with your team, because I think self-awareness is where it starts. Team members being aware of how self-regulated they are with somewhat of an objective way to think about it. Third, now we're going to look at self-motivation. Here's the definition. It's using our deepest values to move and guide us towards goals, help us take initiative and strive to improve, and persevere in the face of setbacks and frustrations. What this is basically saying is, are you motivated by somebody holding a carrot and stick over your head, or does it come from your values and from inside of you? Or are you an inside out person? A self-motivated person finds the why within themselves. They don't need somebody to micromanage or babysit them to get things done. And as you look at yourself, consider this statement. Is this true of you? Or how true is this? Or how often is this true? I have a passion for my work that goes beyond money and status. I tap into my values and purpose to find the energy and the desire needed to persevere, even when it is difficult. I focus and perform not because I have to, but because I want to. Is that true almost always? Most of the time, some of the time, occasionally, or almost never? That you have a passion for your work that goes beyond money and status. Something, there's a bigger why than just what other people think of me and how much money I make. I have values that I tap into, and that's where I find the purpose and the energy and the desire to persevere even when it gets tough. I focus and perform not because I have to do it, just because I have some external obligation, but because this is an internal commitment. I want to. Give yourself a number there and we'll move on to the next pillar. The next pillar is empathy. This is one I've had to work on through the years. I asked somebody once, do you consider me to be an empathetic person? They said, well, you're no Mother Teresa. And I laughed and said, I have some leadership work to do on myself there. Here's what it is. It's sensing what people are feeling. It's being able to take their perspective and being able to cultivate a rapport and attunement with a broad diversity of people. Here's the question. You may be empathetic with some people that you would consider friends or people that are more like you, but do you have the ability to tap into people that are not like you and relate to them and understand them? Here's the statement. I take the time and exercise the patience necessary to listen to other people until I understand them and can clearly see things from their perspective and even feel their emotion. Wow, that's such a beautiful thing. You know, I work a lot with teams trying to build teams and camaraderie and working together. And this is such a key pillar in emotional intelligence, that people slow down and learn to be mature and interdependent and patient enough to listen to other people, to understand them and clearly not see it, not trying to get them to see things your way or what you see, but trying to and striving to really see things how they see it. It's meeting people where they are, not just logically, not just with the facts, but emotionally. I even feel their response and how, based on how they're looking at the situation, I can feel how they feel. This is not necessarily agreeing with people's judgment. This is just understanding things from their perspective. Give yourself a score in this one. Almost every situation I'm like that, Dave. Or in most situations I'm like that, or sometimes I'm like that. That's a 3. Or a few times I get there, or almost never am I able to do that well. Again, it's a broad diversity. Can I do this with about anyone? Give yourself a score there. Now we're going to look at social skills. This is the last pillar. And the definition is I'm able to handle emotions in relationships well and accurately read social situations and networks. Interacting smoothly, using these skills to persuade, to lead, to negotiate, to settle disputes. In other words, can you get involved in drama? Can you get involved in problems? Can you get involved in conflict and bring something positive to it? Do you have the skill to work socially with people when they're struggling and having some dysfunction and able to move things to a better place through persuasion and leading and negotiating and settling disputes? Are you a peacemaker? Are you a collaborator? Are you able to bring people together? That's the question. And here's the following statement that you want to assess. I am able to read and understand social situations, and I use that skill to form deep, enduring, influential relationships for the purpose of serving and caring for people and nurturing cooperation and teamwork. Again, I think these statements are amazing. I will send all this to you so you can really slow it down and give it some thought. But just as you think about this, I'm going to read it again. You are this kind of person almost always, most of the time, some of the time, few times, almost never. Here it is again. I am able to read and understand social situations and use that skill to form deep, enduring, influential relationships for the purpose of serving and caring for people and nurturing cooperation and teamwork. Are you a team builder through deep, enduring, influential relationships because you can read and understand the social situation that you're in? You know, every institution, every organization, every family, every group of people have a different dynamic, a different culture. Are you able to enter into culture and read it well, and then develop relationships based on a respect of individuals, even diverse individuals? That's the question. A highly emotionally intelligent person with social skills can do that. They can read the situation, they interact well with people, and they use that skill to really bring things together. So give yourself a 1 to 5 there. Now, you should have in front of you, if you're fully participating and doing this with me, 5 pillars and rated yourself 1 to 5. We're going to go through some practical tools, or at least one practical tool for each of these that can help you get better. And so this is the application part of this morning. Let's look at self-awareness first. Again, going to review the definition: connected with what we are feeling in the moment and using that sense to guide our decisions, having a realistic assessment of our own abilities and a well-grounded self-confidence. Self-awareness. What is it that we can do, a suggested habit to increase your self-awareness? If you didn't rate as high as you like on this, here's a suggested habit. Set aside 20 minutes at the beginning of each day to journal your feelings and learnings from the previous day's activities and interactions, and to also consider the upcoming conversations and interactions of the day, where you can practice being in the present with yourself and with the people you will be with. What does this mean? Let me make it even simpler. You're going to sit down 20 minutes in the morning or at the end of the day. If you're more of an evening person, you might want to do it before you go to bed. I'm a morning person. I like to do this in the morning. And I'm going to do some reflection on my feelings from the day and what I learned from the day and what I've learned from my interactions yesterday. And then I'm going to consider the conversations and the meetings and the things that are on my agenda coming up today, and do some proactive thinking about how I want to show up in that, what kind of person I would like to be in that situation. It's just increasing that part of the brain by exercising it. This is a habit. This is like a mental workout, and it's done through journaling. I've had people that hate journaling. I have people that love it. I would suggest that you don't have an I know there, and you just find that interesting and you give it a try, especially if you're lacking in some self-awareness. So I hope that habit's helpful. We'll review that quickly at the end. Let's go on to our next one. So the habit is a journal 20 minutes a day. Yesterday's interactions, upcoming interactions. Here's another lesson in self-awareness. I like my PowerPoint here, by the way. I hope you all give me some good points on the PowerPoint. We have a hot air balloon here. Now, this is the model, and I want you just to enjoy the story. But if you've ever looked at children, young children, if they're dry, if they're well fed, in other words, if they're basically comfortable, they're not hungry, and they've had their nap, their natural state almost always tends to be up. They are very self-aware in the sense that they're very connected with their current now and the moment right now. And they're certainly very connected with what they think and what's going on in their heads. I would just say this, their consciousness is high. And they're very conscious with what's with them. Now, in this balloon example, what would be the thing that would keep that balloon from being high up and very present, very self-aware? Well, we would have sandbags and we would have tethers. And this is my model. I thought of this one day when I was journaling, that the sandbags really come from the past. Some people live in their past thinking. They live in their past regrets and their resentments and their hard feelings. And those sandbags take them out of their present in their mind, and they're in the past. And they just can't seem to get beyond the emotional entrapment of the thought of the past. The past no longer exists. The past is not real. The past is now just a concept. It happened for sure, but it's not going on now. And people who carry the sandbags of the past in their mind, their balloon stays low. They have a low emotional energy and connection. They have somewhat of a victim mentality, and they're not really owning it and stepping up to service. But the future can do that as well. Some people are so worried and fearful. And Lord knows in the last couple of years, we've had plenty of fuel for that, to just worry about what's going to happen. And what happens, friends, is that your daily, the value of the gift of today, the beautiful gift of today you've been given, gets robbed from you because your mind is not present. It's in the future or in the past. I think that little self-awareness journaling is an opportunity to begin your day or maybe end your day in the habit of being self-aware of the present. We're just looking at yesterday and today. We're not projecting years in the future or days or weeks in the future. We're not going back into our past, the great glories of the past or the great hardships of the past. We're really saying right now in this present moment, if I'll just settle down and be quiet, everything's okay. And I can become very connected and self-aware. That will help you in that area of emotional intelligence, self-awareness. So that's another tool. Let's look at self-regulation now. Again, the definition is handling our emotions so they facilitate rather than hinder the task at hand. It's being conscientious and delaying immediate gratification in order to pursue a bigger goal. Recovering well from emotional distress. We have some resilience, some bounce back. So how might we have a habit to help us with our self-regulation? Here's the habit. Notice the situations and the circumstances that cause you to become irritated, frustrated, impatient, or aggravated. I would even say it might be good to journal those, do a journal of upsets. When do I lack self-regulation? But specifically, what is precipitating that? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What are the thoughts that I'm having that are causing me to be irritated, frustrated, impatient, or aggravated? You know, the fact is, folks, nobody can make you angry. No situation can make you frustrated. That's not true. It's your processing of other people and their words and their actions and what's going on that causes your emotions. Your emotions are a direct response to what's happening in your head about what's happening out here. What's happening out here is just circumstance. It's neutral. It's when you interpret that circumstance and process it that you become irritated, frustrated, impatient, or aggravated. So if you can get in touch with the situations, circumstances that cause that in you, that seem to cause that in you, then you can use something called The Work by Byron Katie. It's just a CBT tool to reframe your thinking and thus influence your words, your actions, your emotions, and your attitudes. As you start to speak differently and think differently and act differently about the circumstances that you face, you will start to self-regulate in a much better way, because emotions become the caboose instead of the engine. They are now, I'm being self-controlled and I'm regulating those emotional responses. I'm not denying them. I'm not ignoring them. I'm just letting them be helpful to me. So the habit is to practice this thing called the work. And let me give you this really quickly. That's just the good old CBT triangle, that thought, action, and feeling are very related to each other. And Byron Katie has a book called Loving What Is, where she talks about this. You can find this information free on Google. You can Google this and find this free on the internet. These 4 simple questions. So I'm going to just use an example to make this really clear. George, I am George's supervisor, and he's been late to work twice this week. So George is just irresponsible is the thought that I'm having that's frustrating me. He's just become irresponsible. Here's the 4 questions. Is that thought true? George is irresponsible. Well, it seems true to me. Can you absolutely know that it's true? Well, not really. I haven't talked to George. It just seems like he's becoming like he doesn't care anymore. He's irresponsible. Well, how do you react when you have that thought? I get frustrated. I get mad. I get discouraged. Who would you be without that thought? Probably more likely to help George out. Probably more likely to get involved in a conversation that's needed, because I don't want to go into that all upset and aggravated, so I avoid it. So what I need to do is I need to turn that thought around. Here's a way to turn that thought around. I'm the one that's being a little bit irresponsible. I'm not dealing with my supervisor managerial role here. That's one way to look at it. Maybe George isn't frustrated or irresponsible at all. Maybe he's got a responsibility outside of work that's really got him burdened down. That's a possibility too. Not saying that's what's going on, but if you take the thought you're having and you reframe it and turn it around, you can start. That's a practice. That's a skill set to learn how to regulate your emotions and to put them in place. It's giving the benefit of the doubt. It's giving some grace and some space in my conversations and in my dealings with people. When I'm getting wound up and angry and impatient and self-righteous, that is not going to serve anybody well. It's not going to help me. It's not going to help them. It's not going to help the situation. I need to self-regulate by thinking. I need to get the prefrontal cortex and the cognitive part of my mind re-engaged. I need to use my thought to direct my actions, which will direct my feelings. So I hope that's helpful. Love to coach you and help you some more with that. If that's an issue for you, let's move on to self-motivation. Again, the definition is self-motivation is using our deepest values to move and guide us towards our goals, to help us take initiative and strive to improve and persevere in the face of setback and frustration. Where do you go for your strength? Do you go to other people? Do other people have to keep pushing you and encouraging you? Or do you have someplace inside? Here's a suggested habit if you wanted to learn how to tap into the self-motivation that is there for all of us. It's just something that needs to be nurtured and developed. Here it is. Set aside a specific regular time to establish and review your core values and personal mission. And if you need some more information on how to develop those, I'd love to help you. But once you get some instructions, Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, has a beautiful chapter on this. but write out your values and your personal mission statement on a 3x5 card and refer to that card throughout the day, especially when things get difficult and challenging. Again, you can Google a good resource on how to define personal core values and purpose. I'd be glad to send you some articles and help with that. Just ask for them. But here's the point. You need to develop the habit of looking to your own values and your own self-motivation versus having to have some carrot and stick reward or some kind of punishment to keep you moving forward. This is looking to that bigger why of who I choose to be. This is truly getting above the line in my terms, being that owner, owning my personhood. So clarifying personal values and purpose and then reminding yourself of those in difficult situations is the habit to help you with your self-motivation. I'll let you percolate on that one for a moment, and then we'll move on to the lesson in self-motivation, the tree. A lot of content on this slide, so I'm going to just fly over it. We're doing the flyover, but I want you to look carefully at this model. An apple tree is for apples. When you get a clear picture of your mission and what you're about and what you're up to and what your skills and your talents are, you have a sense of what results you can produce. So an apple tree would say, I produce apples. That's what I'm about. What are you about? Do you have a mission? Have you clarified your why and what you're up to, how you serve, how you make a difference? That's what the result is. Well, then we move to the tree that has to act like a tree to do that, the daily action, the leaves and the branches. What do we have to do to have that result? To fulfill that mission, what do I need to do? See, this is going inside versus going outside. How the circumstances need to change. What other people need to do. We're not going there. We're going inside. And that action that I take needs to be based on some quarterly goals, some annual goals, some weekly priorities. And you're just laughing right now saying, Dave, if you lived in my life and saw how busy I was, I don't have time to do all this. Well, if you want to be self-motivated, you got to work on yourself, not just in yourself. You just don't have to do things. You have to work on who you are. And all of that is rooted in mission, which is underlined by values and principles. So this alignment process, I coach people in this. How can I get my life aligned to the results that I want? How can I get my actions to be congruent with my mission, values, and principles? Do I really know what my values and mission are? Have I even really thought about life in that regard? Have I gone to my own funeral and looked back and said, what's that dash on the tombstone? That little dash between when I was born and when I was died called my life. What are the results I actually want to have from that? Have I done any of that work? And if I do that work and get clear on the result, begin with the end in mind, then I can go back and establish values and mission based on principle and what to do. Let's move on to empathy. This is that sense inside of us that we can feel what other people feel. And it's being able to take their perspective and seeing and feeling things from their viewpoint and able to cultivate out of that a rapport and an attunement with a broad diversity of people. In other words, how well do you as a person connect with other people? Here's a suggested habit to increase your empathy. Schedule. How do you spell love? It's T-I-M-E. That's how you spell it. Schedule regular conversations with key team members with the goal of getting to know and understand them. Again, I can hear the voices chattering. We don't have time for this. If you have the kind of connection with people that you could have, what kind of teamwork, what kind of synergy, what kind of results would you start to produce if everybody was fully engaged? It is a leadership issue, friends. And if I'm lacking empathy, this isn't a soft skill. This is a foundational thing. This is a people thing. Keep track. Measure how many times you interrupt them and don't let them finish their sentences. Now, that interruption can be outwardly, just by being rude and talking over them. I've been known to do that many times. I still do it. I'm working on that habit. Or you can be inwardly interrupting them. They don't hear it out in the room, but in your head, you're jumping ahead to answers. You're not sitting with the sole goal, primary goal of getting to know and understand them. This is a skill set. This is a habit that needs to be developed, to learn how to sit with people just to understand them and to listen to them, and measure how often you hold back offering your advice or your solutions or your comments prematurely before you first listened and understood them completely. Again, I know a lot of people on this call have had communication training. This is 101, but what is said and talked about many times is seldom done. And I'm still, as a coach, this is my work. This is what I do as my career, is this habit. I'm still working on it. I'm still failing at it at times. But I think on awareness training today is what we're talking about. So what is the habit? Schedule some listening conversations with team members. Here's the tool. Again, I'm going to give you the flyover on this. This is a half-day seminar, just this one chart here. But it's basically choosing to respect others and respect yourselves and get in the I'm okay, you're okay box, where you are fully empathetic and kind to you and other people and respectful. And in that atmosphere, you can truly listen without the I know, and without the presumption, and without the judgment, and without all that baggage. I can truly be empathetic and understanding and listening and appreciative of this person as a person. Doesn't mean I agree with everything they say. Doesn't mean I even think they're wise in the direction they may be taking. That analysis part is another part of the brain. We're talking about developing this emotional part of the brain where I'm vulnerable and I give people some grace and some space to be who they are and appreciate who they are as a person. And it's getting in that I'm okay, you're okay box. It's practicing being there by scheduling these conversations. Practice being in that box by scheduling conversations with key team members for the purpose of just listening and understanding and getting to know who they are. If you give people that kind of respect and time, you'll have a loyal follower. You'll have somebody that will be glad to follow you because you've listened to them. Social skills, our last pillar. Handling emotions in relationships well and accurately reading social situations and networks, interacting smoothly, using these skills to persuade, to lead, to negotiate, to settle disputes. Here's the habit. Look for the opportunities to help team members solve problems. Some of us run away from that. Here comes somebody with another problem. Look for the opportunities to help someone else solve a problem using a 4-question problem-solving tool that I'll give you in a moment. Practice asking these questions, listening carefully, and then asking clarifying questions until true problems are solved and we can get a clarity on what the problem is and what the solution is. So use the problem-solving tool with your team. And here is the tool. A great social skill, solving problems. Ask what's broke and what broke it. Before you move into trying to solve something, slow things down and get the team, or if it's you and another person, to really dig down and peel back the onion and find out what really the problem really is. And once you have that defined, then ask the question, what will this look like ideally when it's fixed. Now, friends, this is amazing power in helping somebody solve a problem. It's so simple, but it is so powerful. Once you get clear about where things are right now and what's not ideal about them, and you get clear about where we want things to be, ideally, there is a tension and a gap created. And in that tension and gap, we answer the question, what will fix it? Our brains are wired as biocomputers to immediately start to work in that way. Our work in this, the social skill in this, is listening and understanding to perceive what's really broke and what broke it and what we would love to see it become. And when you get those two things defined, the solutions, the creative solutions start to appear. And it is a beautiful process of problem solving. And if you'll practice that, your social skills will start to grow and go through the roof. So that brings us to our action plan. Again, all of this without doing anything about it is maybe a nice morning and kind of curious and interesting to you, but there's not a lot of benefit until you take action. From your learning today, what specific pillar or pillars of emotional intelligence do you want to improve? And specifically, what habit change will you begin to practice to further develop your emotional intelligence? Here's a summary of those practices again, just for a review. A 20-minute daily journaling to increase self-awareness, practicing the work by Byron Katie to increase your self-regulation, clarifying personal values and purpose to tap self-motivation, scheduling listening conversations with team members and other people to increase empathy, and using the problem-solving tool with the team to increase social skill. Be glad to send you all those tools and work with you. Here are the offers from today. I'll send you all these slides that have all this information. Just ask me for them. Second, email me and I will send you a reading list for further learning. And I'm going to put that reading list up on the screen here in a minute, but I'll also send that to you so you don't have to scurry and try to write it all down. And third, a hugely discounted coaching call with me virtually on Zoom for $99. I'd be glad to work with you on any one of these pillars, specifically in your situation, to get you started. And why do I do that? I don't think people understand coaching until they experience it. So I want to give you an opportunity at a very reasonable price and discounted rate to experience that and to help you implement one of these suggested changes. And so there's my email address, davebeam@mentordavebeam.com. If you want some help, or maybe your team wants some help in any of this, feel free to reach out. And now, in conclusion, I will move to the screen with some further learning resources. So, working with emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence for the Modern Leader, Christopher Connors, The Work by Byron Katie, and then the book that actually outlines that's called Loving What Is. The emotional intelligence assessment in Psychology Today, there's a more thorough assessment if you found that interesting, figuring out where you need some help. The book by Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. It's been around for a while. I think it really touches on these issues in organizations. I love this book, The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. He's written a lot of these tales of different organizational issues, stories that he's made up to illustrate this. He's pulled all this together into one book called The Advantage that outlines all the principles. And then my website, we have a lot of things around these issues. This is the heart of what I do as a coach and a leader. And all of those videos and those articles are free. If you'll go again to mentordavebeam.com, feel free to go there. If you sign up there, you get a free article every week. I give a lot of stuff away because I just love to help. And as a result, I have a lot of good clients, great clients, very full practice right now, and I'm very blessed. So thank you for your time today. I'm going to give you 5 minutes back and say goodbye. But again, we appreciate you being here and look forward to future events. Hope you can join us in the future. So thank you with that.